Another Wednesday is come and gone, and I've got some comics. Let's talk about them. Hey, welcome to 9 Panel Grid. This week, we've seen accidental prison riots, 90s nostalgia fuel, and soda pop shenanigans. But we're going to kick things off this week with Black Canary Best of the Best number 4, written by Tom King with artwork by Ryan Sook. I've been a little bit harsh on this series so far, but I feel like the framing device, which was the commentators of the fight going on between Black Canary and Lady Shiva, has been a little bit overdone, and it wasn't really as effective as maybe it wanted to be right from the onset. What I can say though is that this issue is probably the best issue of the series thus far. We spend a lot of time in the backstory basically of Dinah and her relationship, how it begins with Oliver Queen. It really shows kind of why she is the resilient character that she is, and it really shows maybe why the fight, which is taking place in present time, is starting to kind of show that the tides are turning and that Lady Shiva is against the ropes now, as opposed to Black Canary, which it was earlier on in the series. So they do a really good job at laying that groundwork. Again, the most ineffective part, though, is the commentators of the fight itself. But because we don't get to spend a lot of time with them in this issue, I feel like it shines for that reason. Next up, let's talk Department of Truth number 28, written by James Tynion with artwork by Martin Simmons. This is a really great jumping on point for anyone that maybe is a lapsed reader of the series or anyone that wants to dip their toes in and figure out what this is all about. Dipping your toes in might be a difficult proposition considering that the whole notion of this book is all about the manifestation of ideas based on societal influence and societal like kind of mass thoughts. But I think it's a worthwhile journey, and I think this is probably going to be the best entry point. So we've just wrapped up the mini arc that took place with the JFK assassination and Marilyn Monroe being like a main player in parts of that. And now we're back to present day. We're back with our main players, and we're really starting to see kind of the factions take place on where people want to go, and people that we thought were with the department maybe aren't so much here. Our main player is trying to keep his partner safe and trying to kind of send him off on a tangent, which will take him further and further away from his partner, all the while, though, keeping him safe. On the flip side, we also see that kind of Lee Harvey Oswald's right hand man in the past now has kind of gone rogue and has his own ideas about how he wants to start shaping the world and how he wants to start shaping the thought patterns of the greater society. So really cool explorations on that, really effective writing. This series does its best when it's working with those main players. Now that we're back, it's getting really exciting. All right, with our next issue, let's talk Detective Comics 1094, written by Tom Taylor with artwork by Mikel Hanin. So Mikel Hanin is continuing to shine on this book as he has complete artistic freedom as he is the penciler, inker, and colorist. And when it comes to the look of this book, I think it's the color palette that he's choosing here with soft, like pastel type colors here that really make this book pop off of the page. I really love the way that each and every page turn looks, how everything is presented to us here. Mikel, great job. The storyline is having a lot of fun, and that's something that's kind of completely different than the previous arc that we just had or story run that we had from Ram V. This is very much more traditional when it comes to Batman, and that's kind of okay. It's a change of pace, but I think everyone needed kind of a change of pace as well. This is all about, like, this issue kind of really is all about Bruce and Damian's relationship and the trust they have in one another. And even when things kind of take a turn that maybe they didn't expect, it goes to show that they kind of care and trust for one another enough to see that this is just another avenue to take as opposed to sidestepping the actual plan. I really love the way that their relationship works together within this book. We're still tiptoeing around who the actual villain of this book is, but we're starting to get more pieces laid out for us. And we also now see that Bruce, while he's taking this drug, what the ramifications of that might be. Again, they're planting seeds for those ideas to take, to sprout later on here. Overall, this is a pretty effective issue here, and I'm having a lot of fun with Detective Comics. Okay, let's talk Dust to Dust number 3, written by Phil Bram with artwork by J.G. Jones. What I'm realizing about this whole series is that this is very clearly going to be a much more enriching experience as a trade read or waiting for like some kind of deluxe edition to come out, because This is a very slow burn book. This is something where answers don't get delivered each and every issue. And the mystery that we're trying to solve here being that there is a murder taking place within the Dust Bowl era, and a haphazard sheriff and a photography person from the Chicago Tribune are kind of sort of trying to solve it, but they aren't even really sure that the mystery is taking place and that the murder is even really a murder to begin with. So it's a slow burn. We're already 3 issues in, and it hasn't really delivered the hook that I'm looking for yet to kind of continue on issue over issue. But that's not to say it's not a worthwhile experience. I think that the artwork is fantastic. Everything is like seeped in sepia tone, which makes it feel of the era. There's a lot of good things to take away from this, but when it comes to single issue reading, this one might not take the cake. Next up, we have FML number 4, written by Kelly Sue DeConnick with artwork by David Lopez. I continue to have a lot of fun with this series, and it's all about the relationships that are developing each and every issue, or at least becoming more enriched each and every issue. The mother and son dynamic in this is absolutely fantastic. It's the heartbeat of this entire series, as we have the mother who's kind of reeling with the fact that her and her friends experienced this very traumatic event in the past here where there was a murder that took place. And ever since that time, they've basically been investigating it by themselves and trying to figure out who the actual culprit of this murder is. And as soon as they think that they have this person cornered and they know exactly who it is, that person is no longer with us. So now they're reeling, trying to figure out what goes on from here. Where do they go from here? All the while, we have our teenage characters who have gone through their own supernatural oddities, if you will, and are still dealing with just the day in and day out of being a teenager in high school as well. Really great dynamics here. I love the back and forth between, again, the parent and child here as they have their own viewpoints. And it's funny because neither one of them is necessarily wrong, and they kind of know what makes each other tick, so they totally get each other's personas. It's really fantastic. David Lopez is smashing it on artwork as well, especially when you get those narrations, basically where they're characterizing who the other person is talking about. You get a glimpse into the persona of that person, and it's really nice. So if you're not checking out FML, you might want to give it a shot because it's totally worthwhile. All right, let's talk a Green Arrow number 21, written by Chris Condon with artwork by Montos. Again, this is another great issue of this reintroduction of the character of Green Arrow, of Oliver Queen in Star City, and I love the approach that Chris is taking here. It's gritty, it's grounded, it's crime-driven, and it's everything I want from this character. We get to see a little bit more about Oliver Queen's involvement, if you will, with the freshwater killer and kind of like the catalyst for everything that's happening, where this whole community was basically poisoned. And Oliver Queen is his name is the one that signed on the contract that basically said, yeah, you can go ahead and release chemicals here. So there's some mystery to be solved here. All the while, it basically takes everything you know about the character of Oliver Queen, those hard traveling hero kind of tropes, right? That we know about this character, and not so much turning them on their heads, but modernizing them. It's making us look through those older ideas through a new lens, and it's really refreshing. It's really nice to see this character grow and evolve, but also kind of stay true to who he is. That's the sign of a really good writer. On top of that, Montos does some fantastic things here. There's a lot of action set pieces that are happening here, and I'm just a sucker for any time that there's an automatopoeia that becomes a panel. He does that in here. It works so effectively. It's really great artwork on this book here. It just fits the tone and the vibe so well that this team, if they stick around on this book long enough, it's going to truly become something special. So, Green Arrow number 21, awesome issue. Next up, let's talk Iron Man number 5, written by Spencer Ackerman with artwork by Javier Pina. This is getting a little bit trite and a little bit clunky, if I'm being honest. I feel like Spencer is trying to maybe do something new with this character as they're leaning on the steampunk aesthetic of like this new suit that Tony is wearing and the huge sword that, like, albeit silly, is like kind of awesome as well. And all of the, his villainous characters that he's been fighting in the last 5 issues have all been magical based. So there's an approach that's being taken here, and I kind of like it, but it feels like maybe it's being handcuffed a little bit. It feels like we can't get out of first gear, even though there's kind of ideas that I want to see played within this book. The dialogue feels a little bit clunky, and we're dealing with the ideas that we've kind of already seen in the past. Tony loses his company, Tony fights bad guys, Tony regains control of his company, tries to stop making weapons. Like, we've been there, we've lived that, we've seen it, and it feels like Marvel is just too scared to let this character grow and develop and become something different, because again, you can tell that the story is trying to at least lean in different areas and try to look at different things that haven't been explored with Iron Man, at least not regularly. But he just can't seem to get to do that because we're still telling the same story over and over and over. I'm going to stick around a little bit longer to maybe see if kind of like the reins are let free on this book. But if it stays in the way that it's going right now, it's not going to be a long leash that I'm going to be able to give it. All right, next up we have Justice League Unlimited number 4, written by Mark Waid with artwork by Dan Mora. I feel like I want to like this book way more than I'm actually liking it. There's some cool things that are happening here, and I love seeing this, huge array of characters kind of being smashed in this book, the right character for the right time for the right purpose. But it's given me whiplash. I feel like as soon as I want to start paying attention to something, we're whipped around to something else, and then, like, before that's even resolved, we're whipped around to something else, and there's no heartbeat to this book. There's no, like, I guess, anchor for this book that makes me want to come back, because again, you just keep whipping around from character to character to character. I did like the interactions between Mr. Terrific and Tess in this, trying to kind of regain consciousness of the avatar of the Green, Levi. But it was too little too late a little bit. We didn't, like, as soon as that was resolved, everyone kind of just said, okay, we're done here, we're moving on to the next thing. And I know that that's the kind of the mission statement of this book, is to kind of get eyeballs on all of these characters, but you shouldn't do it at the risk of losing new readers who kind of want some kind of, again, anchor point to kind of, like, put their stake in and say, this is the reason I'm reading this book. So overall, Justice League is just kind of letting me down. Next up, we have Long Cold Winter number 3, written by Francesca Perillo with artwork by Stefano Cardicelli. You're buying this book because of the artwork, first and foremost. Let's put that right out on Front Street. The artwork is unique. It's fantastic. The color palette really pops with, like, this warm tone against kind of like the cooler colors of our main characters. But the artwork is just totally unique and totally something different than you get from traditional comics. And I really appreciate that. The story that we're being delivered doesn't feel like we're getting a lot of new stuff each and every issue, while it's all about this journey, basically, where this reluctance, basically, mentor character is kind of taking this child to this quote unquote promised land where robots are going to be able to thrive and live on their own outside of, like, the thumb of the corporate overlords who control everything right up to the oxygen we breathe. So we're getting delivered tidbits of the story here and there each and every issue, but there's not big bold developments. And what happens is that every issue starts feeling the same, because we kind of get the end cap with our main character, Peace Dog. We learn something new about his past, and we learn about the consequences that come along with the choices he's making. But it's all kind of like feeling like it's a retread, like we're getting told the same message in a different way each and every issue. So the storyline, it's decent. I want to keep exploring it. But again, the artwork is at such high marks that it's going to keep me coming back for more. All right, let's talk Pop Kill number 1, written by Dave Johnson and Jimmy Palmiotti with artwork by Juan Santa Cruz. So this was previously a Kickstarter book that took place through Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor's imprint that they have, where they've been putting out and self-publishing books for a lot of different people, themselves included. And this is now coming out through Mad Cave, and I think it fits in Mad Cave's kind of arena of the books that they're delivering nowadays. And I'm really glad that this is getting shown to maybe a wider audience now, because this book is silly, bombastic, action-packed, super fun, just craziness. It is about two warring soda pop manufacturers and the lengths they will go to make sure that they are the top tier, highest sellers of their product, bar none. And what that means is that they have heightened levels of security, hitmen, assassins, freaking security, and like just craziness all over the place. This plays out almost like a James Bond type of mystery and action espionage kind of thing, but tongue in cheek enough to where you're having so much fun with it, you almost forget what's going on and what's happening because you're just so charmed by our main character, even though he's totally sleazy. Still kind of charming as well, though. Artwork is totally serviceable in this book. I really like the approach that's being taken here. And again, the storyline is so silly and wacky that even when you kind of want to roll your eyes, you're not going to because you're having too much fun in the book itself. So if you haven't picked up Pop Kill, maybe give it a shot. It might be right up your alley. Speaking of bombastic, let's talk Superman number 23, written by Joshua Williamson with artwork by Dan Mora. I continue to have so much freaking fun with this book, and I know exactly why, because this book is totally 90s nostalgia fuel. They are playing so many of the hits when it comes to the death of Superman and the reign of the return of the Superman era that it's like it's so hard for me to hate on this book. Not that I would even want to begin with, because it's written extraordinarily well and drawn arguably even better. When I'm looking at the multitude of Dan Mora books that come out, I think that this one stands amongst the top here for a couple different reasons. The line work is awesome, but mostly the color work that's taking place here really pops off the page. I feel like there's different approaches that are being taken here as opposed to Justice League Unlimited that just make this book so much more lively and so much more energetic. Specifically, in a couple panels of this book where there is an energy blast that is going right towards Jimmy Olsen that he needs to be saved from, and time will tell whether or not that actually happens. But again, this is all about the fight between Superman and Doomsday, and now Superwoman and the Timekeeper. We get unraveling like mysteries, including the nature of how the Timekeeper possibly becomes who he is, knowing what his origins actually were. That's kind of exciting stuff. I'm really liking this book. It's just again bombastic and just comic booky kind of fun. So if that's something you're looking for, if you want the top tier superhero book on stands right now, I'd put money on the fact that it's probably Superman. All right, let's talk Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 7, written by Jason Aaron with artwork by Juan Ferreira. I did not want to read this book after the first 4 to 5 issues here, as I really didn't have a great time with the individual stories of the brothers on their own. Now that the turtles are back together, not that they are wanting to be together, but now that they're back together, I feel like this book totally opened up. They're in New York, they're together. They need to kind of rekindle their relationships and become brothers once again, but we're starting to see those bonds start to kind of reformulate, even though again it's out of reluctant standards at this point. Juan Ferreira's artwork is totally knocking out of the park with this. He is becoming one of the artists in the great lineage of awesome TMNT artists, and it really stands the test of time with those other artists on this book. This is some of the best artwork you're going to see on stands. It's definitely making this book worthwhile. Jason Aaron has also he's always been a writer for me that takes a couple issues to really kind of breathe life into the story and kind of like deliver the character that we want to see. And that stands true here, as now I understand the voice of these characters. I understand the motivations of the right here and right now turtles. And I've said this before, but my North Star for anything Ninja Turtles is always going to be the very first movie that came out. And when I say that, it means that I hear the voices of these turtles in my head, right? So, and if you're doing that, if you're delivering that, you have a winner on your hands. TMNT is absolutely a winner. Definitely check it out. Next up, we have Ultimate Spider-Man number 14, written by Jonathan Hickman with artwork by Marco Cocchetto. This one was jaw-dropping. Absolutely, utterly jaw-dropping. I can't believe they took the steps that they took in this issue and got away with it without it being spoiled. Kudos to you, Marvel, for letting that kind of thing happen, because wow, this was an impactful issue. We finally see somewhat of the resolution of Peter and Harry's time in the Savage Land, and we kind of see that maybe Peter is a stronger character than he even thought himself to be capable of. And I really like seeing that character development. His journey as being Spider-Man is So I don't want to say drastically different than the 616 version, but definitely much different to the point now where the great power and great responsibility lessons to be learned, I feel like is being learned piecemeal over time. And he hasn't really quite manifested what the meaning of that idea is yet. So it's really cool watching the journey here. And again, seeing the ramifications about each and every step and misstep that he takes. The other part that we get here is that while Peter is gone, Spider Man technically is not, as he continues swinging around. Who is it? I'll let you read the issue to find that out, but I love the way that they play with a relationship that takes place between a couple characters, but maybe in a non traditional way here. Really fun ideas being played with. Again, Ultimate Spider Man is a hallmark, book for Marvel. And if you're not checking it out, come on, it's the best Spider Man book. Definitely give it a shot. All right, sticking around in the Ultimate Universe, let's talk Ultimate X-Men number 12, written and drawn by Peach Momoko. So we're finally starting to get maybe, I don't know, revelations, maybe even some like wrapping up of certain story arcs that are taking place within this book. Is now everything has become very crystal clear about where everyone stands, what the stakes are, and it kind of pulls the Shadow King character back into the fray as he is now being shown as the main villain after the introduction of the Children of the Atom cult. So we get interactions between the Shadow King and Maystorm and him trying to they're basically fighting over friendship, right? It feels very age appropriate for the characters that were being delivered in this pages of this book, as it feels kind of like two best friends warring over one other friend here for this, this trio of characters. We also get to spend time with Armor as well, as she has further interactions with the Shadow King, and the mysteries that were kind of like delivered within the first couple issues of this series are now finally starting to make sense as the suicides that took place. You start to see the influence behind like what caused those things to happen, what part the Shadow King played in that, and what part even Armor played in that. So this book is growing, it's getting better and better with each issue, and I feel like the focus now is definitely, I don't know, scaled in more to make this a more digestible book. So I think that Peach Momoko is starting to really kind of like, again, rein it in and make this something that more readers can maybe hop on and start getting some kind of level of enjoyment from if they weren't previously. So all in all, this might be the best point to maybe dip your toes back in and see what's going on in the universe of Ultimate X-Men. And with our runner-up book of the week, let's talk Absolute Wonder Woman number 5, written by Kelly Thompson with artwork by Hayden Sherman. If you would have told me that kaiju battle was going to be something that took place within the pages of Absolute Wonder Woman, I'd be the first to tell you that did not show up on my bingo card. But I'm kind of happy that it did, because man, Kelly Thompson is just playing with so many cool ideas that are delivered in comic book fun ways that I don't know. It's just like it's playing three-dimensional chess here, because every choice that Diana makes in this book comes with sacrifice. But with those sacrifices that are happening here, she also is learning that she can lean on other people, or that other people will be there to pick up the slack, even though she's not necessarily looking for them to do so. The relationships that are being formed within this book make it so worthwhile, and it makes it such a tremendous read when you see these sacrifices happen and you see how the other characters need to react or want to react based on, again, how heartwarming and charming and just like earnest Diana is in this book. On top of that, Hayden Sherman's artwork. Again, there's a few artists that can really pull off the things that are happening in this book when it comes to the storytelling visually, the panel work, the pacing, and one of those people is Hayden Sherman, raising the bar for the comics medium when it comes to visual storytelling. Absolutely stunning work here. Kelly Thompson, again, when you're talking about those sacrificial moments and the things that are happening here, when they come by way of the fun things that are happening in this book, it just makes it a really special experience. So, Absolute Wonder Woman, totally rocked. And with my top comic of the week, let's talk The Seasons number 2, written by Rick Remender with artwork by Paul Azaceta. I'm totally just taken by this book, as the same like charming, whimsical feelings that I had with issue 1, I totally still get delivered in issue number 2. But that's not all. We don't just spend time with Spring as we did with issue number 1. we're delivered every sibling of the seasons now, as we get to spend a little bit of time with Autumn and the kind of the adventures that she's having as she's unraveling the mystery of this traveling carnival, which basically lays waste to cities. And we don't know the mystery behind that, but we know the ramifications. Then we get to see kind of, the other sisters here too as well. We get to spend time with Winter, we get to spend time a little bit with Summer, and you can see their personalities take place that kind of mimic the feelings that people have during those particular seasons. It's a little bit silly, but this book is a little bit silly, and it leans into those ideas. The other great thing about this is that we're delivered all these characters, and it's so easy to say that, like, to exposition dump as we learn about these people, but they do such inventive things as Spring is navigating her way through the house that, some of them live in, and we see articles tacked up on the pages, on the walls, and we see photos, and we learn so much about our characters just tangentially, as opposed to a character telling us things about them. We learn about their personalities through their interactions, but we're never told this is how this person is. You get to experience it, you get to live it, and you get to see it through the fantastic artwork of Paul Azaceta. Man, very minimalistic approach, but no line is wasted. Everything looks fantastic. Colors pop. This is just such a fun book, and it's giving you little answers and little clues as time goes on, where you're starting to see, I don't know this. I don't want to say the stakes because we don't know what's happening yet, but we can see some of the missteps that could be coming down the pipeline and what that could mean for the sisters. So, Seasons was absolutely awesome and totally worthwhile for Top Comic of the Week. So that's what I've got for you this week, but I'm more curious. What did you read and what were your thoughts? Do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe and be part of the panel. Leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next week.